All right, let's get started. My name is Corinne Waldow. I'm the Senior Director for Economic Vitality at the Boulder Chamber. I want to thank you for joining us for this special session dedicated to sports, recreation, and gyms. We do these special sessions on Fridays at 11. They go into detail into specific industries so that we can help bridge the gap when it comes to some of the public health guidelines. This session will be recorded, and we will send out the link afterwards, just in case you miss anything or somebody else needs to get this information. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Jesse Rounds with Boulder County Public Health.
Thanks, Corinne, and welcome everybody. Good morning. So like we do on Thursdays, I'll start with an epidemiological update and then get into the state dial and finish with public health order updates and more details about our specific questions today. So these are updated as of yesterday. So our case 5-day running average is now at 119 cases, new cases. So that is a significant uptick from the low of last week, I should say. And we're hoping that is leveling off. But it is an increase, and it's obviously, based on this chart, a steady, pretty significant increase. And we're seeing it across all age groups, actually. If you look at this chart, you can see from basically December 31st, we've seen a steady, like a very slight, but perceptible increase in all age groups. So that is a concern. In addition, again, we're seeing a little bit of, a decline overall over time in cases across our municipalities, but it is seems to be leveling off here above where we want to be. So that's another concern. So case rates have been increasing since the holidays. Our long-term care facility cases remain high, and hospitalizations are decreasing. And also, just not a key takeaway here, but a note to say that we are seeing increased mortality, a number of new deaths recently. So that is a concern, obviously, for everyone. So our state dial status. So at the beginning of the week, we were actually, our 2-week cumulative incidence rate was in orange, which was a good sign because the governor, as of Monday, put us into level orange. However, since that day, we've gone up, and we are now just slightly above level orange for 2-week cumulative incidence rate. Luckily, our positivity rate, though inching up again, it was at 4% on Monday. It's now at 5.1%. Which puts us into the yellow zone there. And then our hospitalizations have declined down to level yellow, 8 days of declining or stable hospitalization. So all that's to say, while we are in orange on the dial, the governor put us there. Our metrics won't allow us to stay there unless we see continued decline in our two-week cumulative incidence rate. So jumping into what level orange means, and this is focused specifically on gyms and recreation. So I want to point out that I'm not going to go into a detail on other things, but I do touch on a couple other things that happen in some of our recreation centers and gyms in this. So first of all, most of what happens at level orange is capacity increases to 25%. Interestingly enough, for gyms in this iteration of level orange, gym capacity is now 25% or 50 people per room, whichever is less. And I apologize, I did not finish this last sentence in my presentation. Outdoor classes may have up to 50 people as well, again, distanced. So, and where, if you're within 6 feet of each other, you need to be wearing masks. But outdoors, you can, if you can maintain distance, you can have large groups of people. And the state is encouraging as much outdoor gym-related activity as possible, recognizing it is very cold outside. So indoor events and outdoor events. This is sort of related. I know that there are some gyms and recreation centers that host non-recreation events, and so I just wanted to put these in here. Indoor events, 25% or 50 people, whichever is less, and your occupancy per room is defined by the social distancing calculator. Your outdoor events are same as the indoor events rules, but up to 75 people instead of up to 50 people. So just note there. For sports, and the reason for this call, indoor organized sports are not permitted. The asterisk is there because practice and games are not permitted. However, strength and conditioning training is allowed on a team basis. But basically, if you are playing the sport or practicing playing the sport, that isn't allowed indoors. Outdoor sports, if you can maintain social distancing and be masked, are allowed for 10 or fewer on a field. So little unusual detail there. For school-sponsored sports, and this is based on a variance that was issued by the state in an agreement with CHASA, which I'm going to try to get. It's the Colorado High School Activities Association. They oversee high school sports, and they have an agreement that as of January 18th, Season B practices can begin. And I'll go over what Season B sports are. Season B games can begin in February, and the specific dates are set in the agreement with between the state and CHASA. And the important thing is that school sports, unlike rec league or adult sports that could happen in level yellow, school sports need to follow the outbreak guidance followed by schools. So there's a different practice that you need to be aware of and adhering to for those school sports. So what are the Season B permitted, or Season B sports permitted in Boulder County? At this time, girls swimming, skiing, hockey, and competitive spirit are the sports that are allowed. Note here, wrestling is not allowed. That's an agreement between the school districts and Boulder County, and is being followed by most of the other metro counties. Wrestling is not permitted because the sport, for safety reasons, the participants need to be unmasked to compete and practice, and there were concerns about that, the safety level there. So moving on from that, just for facilities who hold school-sponsored sports. So there are some private and public gyms that have school-sponsored sports. During those events, the spaces occupied by those sports follow the variance capacity guidance, the variance guidance in general. For example, a pool that is managed by a municipality may host a school practice or a school swim meet. If that happens during that time, capacity per lane, capacity in the space in the pool room is set by the variance. As soon as that meet is over, that pool needs to be cleaned, and the space needs to be cleaned, and then it would go back to whatever level we were at, the guidance for that level. I hope that makes sense. We can get into it in Q&A. Corinne, if that doesn't make sense, I can talk about it some more. I don't know if you're getting people like, he's not making any sense. Okay, good. So totally switching gears and nearing the end of this so we can get into questions. I just want to remind everyone, gyms are one of the businesses that is eligible for the small business grant program. So just be aware of that. We can get into details if people want to, but important to note that applications, I think
They go live today at noon.
All right, perfect. And you can, I'm sure Corinne has sent out links to information about that, but definitely take advantage of it. It's a pretty short window to apply, but hopefully it will be helpful for the community. And then just my regular drums that I will beat. Signing up for the exposure notification system is good for the whole community. The more people who are on it, who are participating in it, the better the information you will receive in terms of if you've been close to someone who tests positive. Our business guidance sessions, Thursdays at 1 p.m. is our normal session. Fridays are like this, our special subject sessions, and then the Spanish language session, which is held in collaboration with the Latino Chamber, is recorded in advance and released on Thursdays. And finally, if you have questions, please email us at covidbiz@bouldercounty.org. If you have complaints about a business or about something you see, please contact the call center. I will note that that's something you see that has something to do with COVID-19. They can't help you with other things. But other than that, happy to take questions.
Okay, so question about high school girls and boys basketball.
Did I leave basketball off the list? Let me make sure. I don't know if it is a Season B sport. That's my fault for leaving it off. I grabbed a list of.
In the paper yesterday, I believe it is a winter sport.
Okay.
Yeah, it's covered under the CHASA variants. Basketball.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Olivia. Okay. There's a question about 5-star, but I'll come back to 5-star. If youth sports organizations outside of CHASA are more restrictive in terms of number of people per team, masks for all, and tighter contact tracing than schools are able to do, along with tracing and strategic scheduling, why are they not allowed to play but CHASA is? I think there's just some confusion as to why there's variances for CHASA, but there's not variances for some of the clubs and other sports out there, some of the youth sports organizations.
Sure. Great question. And Lane and Olivia, if you want to jump in at some point, go. I'd be happy to have you answer it. But I think the important thing here is that CHASA worked with the state to obtain a variance specifically for these sports at this time. And it was a negotiation. It was a process. Boulder County and Boulder County Public Health were not involved in the CHASA conversation with the state. And we are happy to continue to administer this at the dial levels that our community is at, because we feel like that is the safe way for our community to be at this time. But I don't know if Lane or Olivia, you have additional thoughts on that.
I mean, you shared what I would share is we were not part of any of those discussions, so it did not involve any input from us. I have great concerns about indoor activities when people are unmasked. So whether that's sports, cheer, anything, those are high risk potential transmission points. So our main goal as public health is the health of our community, and certainly in the school systems, it's making sure schools can have in-person learning. And so that is a higher priority than allowing things that are higher risk. So that is a concern. We certainly want to make sure our business communities are supported and in a way that is not promoting risk to both the businesses and our community, but disease prevention is what we're trying to achieve.
Do we know why 9th graders can play but not 8th graders? Do you have any insight into that?
I think probably because what's permitted is high school sports at this point and not sports below that level.
All right, just to clarify, someone's audio went out briefly. Is Boulder County accepting the CHASA variance so we could go outside orange guidelines for CHASA Season B sports?
So yes, we are the CHASA guidance for all sports except for wrestling are permitted.
And our mask ordinances will be still applicable, where indoors people need to wear masks at all times, and outdoors people need to wear masks when they're not able to socially distance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of 5-star questions, but I'll get to the 5-star in just a few minutes, and we'll talk about that. If a pool has a contracted swim team, can they swim under public school swims team guidance?
Sorry to interrupt. If it's a school swim team, then they can swim under CHASA guidance. If it is a club swim team that is not associated with a school, it cannot. Then that is an indoor sport that doesn't fall under CHASA variants.
Okay. But if it's a private swim club, they have to. It cannot swim under the public school guidance.
Nope.
Okay.
Absolutely right.
But they still are allowed right now under the gyms and recreation to have 50 people per room, and 2 swimmers per lane, and so
right.
I think it's still allowing quite a bit of opportunity for outside of CHASA stuff.
Yeah.
Are indoor drop-in sports considered organized? Would they be acceptable so long as the capacity limits of 25% or 50 people per room are being met?
No, drop-in sports would be under the rec, I would say, and they would not be allowed. Again, if it is a sport that does not involve so I would say that there may be some specific sports that either an individual could play by themselves or can be done at a distance while wearing masks. I don't think so, actually. Lane or Olivia, I don't know if
I don't think there's any indoor sports allowed right now.
Okay.
Outside of.
Thank you. That's the clean way to answer that question.
But other activities, that are indoor, that are not a sport itself. Shooting baskets by yourself is not the same as playing basketball with others. So.
Okay. Let's see. Someone asked for the link to the small business grant. It actually hasn't been released yet. It'll be released at noon today, but I will put it in the chat just in a minute. Someone said that Douglas County has authorized a variance for a gymnastics meet next week. Will Boulder County allow this type of variance?
No, I don't. I mean, I guess no one has approached us with a variance, and we can't vary from what the state is allowing us right now.
Yeah, we have no variance applications that we're putting together for anything beyond what the CHASA variance has already provided. I guess the exception would be that there is a countywide, the 5-star program, which is a variance that would allow potentially gyms to operate one level sort of above where we're at on the dial. So allow for more capacity. Once that system is approved and in place, that would open things up a little more for those that are certified.
And one thing I want to add there, and this is something that Corinne, you talked about yesterday. If we were to enter the 5-star, or if the 5-star program were stood up right now, our metrics are still in level red. And so we would be operating at level orange, which would still mean that organized sports would not be allowed.
And I have a bunch of 5-star questions, so I'm actually going to hit
5-star
in just a minute.
Yes.
So for masks, under 10 what is the age for wearing masks indoors, outdoors?
Okay.
Can you specify on that?
So at the county level, so the state mask order is 10 and over, and everyone must wear a mask indoors, 10 and over. The county adds that if you are outdoors and do not have an expectation of maintaining 6 feet of social distancing at all times, you should be wearing a mask. Again, 10 and over. There are municipality-specific rules, and I believe it's Louisville is down to age 5, but please check with your municipality. I'm not an expert on their mask guidance or mask orders.
Okay, so there's a couple questions about the grant that will be issued today at noon. So it will go live. It's up to $7,000. There's a frequently asked question. There's a question as to whether it's your physical presence or where your business is registered. Most of the counties will be operating this. So even if it is that you're registered in Weld, but you're in Boulder County, but you need to do it in Weld will probably have a program as well. There is only a 21-day window for you to apply. Gyms are eligible. It is a pretty brief application. They try to keep it as brief as possible. And there will be a webinar teaching you how to put it out, put on by the Colorado Enterprise Foundation. As soon as that goes live, I will send out a link along with the recording to this video and the recording to yesterday's video to the group that gets all of this stuff, but all the chambers and the municipalities will be putting information out for the grant program. But it is state funds. If you've received funds for CARES funding in the past, you are not eligible. But there is no guarantees on eligibility for future items. So I think that covers most of the grant questions. Someone did mention that Louisville, it's 3 and up for masks, by the way. All right, questions on pickleball, tennis, bocce, billiards.
Indoor sports are not allowed. That's the easy way to do it.
So tennis, pickleball,
bocce, billiards,
billiards. Organized, even if it's pickup, even if organized sports.
Yep.
Right. So the application, I'll put the link in. All right, let's get to 5-star since all the questions have to do with 5-star at this point. So 5-star, what is 5-star? 5-star, as Lane indicated, is a variance that Boulder County would have to apply for to the state that will allow businesses to operate one level higher than what the metrics of the county are currently at. Even though as Jesse indicated, even though we're at orange, our metrics indicate we're at red. So businesses will be able to operate at this time at orange. So we are currently in the process. We had our administrative committee met yesterday. Just to let you know, the Boulder Chamber and the Longmont Economic Development Partnership are leading the charge on forming the administrative committee and putting together the program for this. It cannot be led by Boulder County Public Health. Their resources need to be spent on helping mitigate and bring down the disease in our community and get vaccines out. So I know a lot of questions are going to Boulder County Public Health. Why aren't you doing the 5-star program? It specifically says in the release of this program that resources cannot be taken away from public health for this. So we have a bunch of community-wide organizations that have put together the admin committee, the application to the state, and the system so that we can apply for this variance to CDPHE. Our intent is to apply to CDPHE for a variance for the 5-star certification program using a third-party vendor. What it would mean is that each business, if we get accepted, the businesses would apply for 5-star certification. You would have to meet certain criteria and you would have a live inspection. We have questions about what your HVAC system, what does all that have to look like? As soon as you apply, you would get a list of what those inspection criteria would be, what you need to actually have in order to get a 5.0 on the inspection. And there will be a live inspector that comes out to inspect your facility. And if you don't get a 5.0, they'll give you a corrective action kind of report, and an inspector would come back out and give you sort of that, make sure those corrective actions took place, and then you would get your 5-star certification and be recertified every 8 weeks. This would allow you, in a situation when our metrics are at the level in which we're at orange, if our metrics hit orange for 7 days, it would allow a gym to then operate, or facility to operate, at yellow. And we understand that that's a significant increase in, especially for our larger gyms, because when you go to yellow, you now go into the social distancing calculator when you have really large facilities. So we understand that that's a game changer for some of you. So we're working to get the infrastructure in place to be able to put this program together. But just note that if we got accepted tomorrow, it doesn't mean you could operate in yellow tomorrow. There is a lot of pieces that need to be put in place. And one of those pieces is that we need to get the incidence of the disease down in our community so that our metrics align with the level at which we're at. But we are applying for the variance, and we are trying to get this in place so that we can have businesses apply and get inspected, so that we are in alignment with some of the other communities. So it is not available yet. We do have an interest form out that I'll also put in chat so that we can understand how many inspectors we need in the community, how many people are not able to afford the $100 one-time application fee, and to understand what kind of resources we need. And we are recruiting inspectors. I think I covered most of the questions. We are expecting to submit the application. We got approval to submit from the admin committee to submit the application. The application is written. I need to get sign off on the final approval letter and the application from 5 hospitals, the county commissioner, and the public health director, and the sheriff, who've all been alerted to this, but I need to get sign off on that before I can submit it to CDPHE. So I'm hoping to do it early. I was hoping to do it today, but there's a lot of pieces. So we're hoping to do it Monday or Tuesday of next week. So that is where we are. We'll be using the same third-party vendor as Denver. So they went before us. So hopefully all the kinks and the troubles and the problems in the application process have been overcome when we get through. They got through them with their application, so that when we submit it, it is not as big a problem. And so that is where we are right now. And if we have any further questions, you can email me. But we are not taking applications at this time, but we are taking interest. I think I covered all the questions. Do you have anything to add, Lane? You're on the administrative committee.
Yeah, I think it's been a very robust effort. I really want to make sure folks know how much work Corinne has put into this. It's been monumental. I don't know that she even had any time off during the holidays because she was actively working on everyone's behalf. So it's been a huge lift, which is one of the reasons why Boulder County Public Health could not take on all of that work. But we are going to still continue to be part of the administrative committee. I think it's also important to know that right now our metrics don't qualify for us to turn this program on. So we need to make sure that our metrics get reversed. Over the course of this week, we've seen an increasing trend in our case incidence rate. As Jesse talked about, we were at orange on Monday and now we're at red. So we're going in the wrong direction. And there is a lot of concern that the holidays with mobility data suggests there was a lot of activity, a lot of people going out and about for Christmas and New Year's. So we are very concerned that in the next week or two, we're going to continue to see spikes as we've seen from that slide Jesse showed earlier, where there was a pretty significant rise over the last week in our case incidents. So once we reverse that trend, then we are eligible to potentially turn that program on. But we're working to try to get all the infrastructure in place so that businesses are ready to go. They may even already have had their certification audits in place. And then once we have the metrics green light, then they could start to operate in those better places. Certainly having the audits is going to benefit any business that does this because it's a very thorough assessment of your ability to reduce COVID risks in your business. So we really do like that aspect of the program. In fact, we had been talking about it and looking at the program well before the state launched a 5-star. There just was no incentive to drive people to do it until the state announced the 5-star program. So.
And gyms and recreation have a specific level of guidance in there. So, and there's incentive for gyms and recreation to apply, especially since red is so restrictive for gyms and recreation. One of the questions, I think, Lane, you might be able to answer this, sports club teams, if they apply under the 5-star. I don't know how, we'll have to figure that.
I don't know that a club, I mean, it's going to need an audit of the physical
The facilities.
operating. So the club would need to work with wherever they're contracting to perform, their training and such, to make sure that facility is set up. Because then once that facility is audited, anybody who's using it would fall under that variance. So so it would behoove whatever locations clubs are working with to push them down that road to get that certification.
All right, Jesse, are lessons allowed?
Depends. Like swim lessons are allowed as long as you follow the proper guidance, distancing and people on the pool deck wearing masks. But another sport, strength and conditioning would be allowed. But again, the training the sport is like playing the sport, so lessons wouldn't be allowed necessarily.
Well, can I just jump in there? Sorry.
Yeah.
I was,
We've
had this a lot. And if you can do a training or a class with wearing a mask and social distancing, and you're not sharing equipment, then it would be more considered like gym or recreation. And as long as the gym guidance is being followed, that's okay. So like a tennis lesson would be a sort of ideal example because you can keep 6 feet of distance, etc. So that is a wrinkle on that. But like league play, definitely not, because that's organized. It's a fine line between the two of those. But I wanted to clarify that. And swimming lessons too, obviously, yeah. Or okay, that is.
Thank you, Olivia. Okay, all right, so we got that question. More questions about the grants. So I'll come back to the grants in a minute. There's a question as to maybe philosophy why as stores can be open with large amounts of people, but parents can't be in gyms socially distanced watching their kids play.
So, first of all, I mean, I guess the answer, the easy answer is it's what the order says. But I think the real difference is stores have a different level of cleanliness that they're seeking. They also have your time near anyone in the store is going to be limited. You're in the store for a short period of time. That's generally where they're getting a lot of that guidance from. With a sport, spectators in particular, you're there for could be an hour or more, relatively close to each other, indoors, and that's considered a heightened risk.
And didn't some of the counties, weren't they able to trace some of the outbreaks back to spectators at sporting events? And some of the data nationwide was showing that the reason they were able to increase some of the retail numbers was some of the data wasn't showing a lot of spread among retail because of the lack of 15 minutes, 6 feet apart. But there was data showing spread among spectators because people were not maintaining that 6 feet.
Yes.
Sorry, I can't talk today.
Yes. Yeah, we've definitely seen that in Colorado. Our peers have seen that. There's been a number of outbreaks. We've seen sports teams in Boulder County with outbreaks. So there's been a number of issues. Again, indoor risk is much greater than outdoor. And then as you remove masks and you're more active or you're breathing harder, those all increase risk.
There was specifically a question as to whether or not you've seen outbreaks due to organized sports in this county, but you've seen it in other counties. We know that there have been in this county too.
We have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. If a club practices at a rec center and the rec center is 5-star, could they practice if we were able to be in Yale? So if they were at that level, would the club be able to then, if the facility is 5-star certified?
I think that's the route. So as far as clubs wanting to apply for the 5-star certification, unless they operate the physical facility, it wouldn't make sense. So really the facility that you're using is the one that needs to be certified, because that audit is going to look at all the different components that they need to. So the club itself, wouldn't make sense for them to apply unless they are the ones that operate the facility.
I'm going to put the interest form in the link. This is the interest form for the 5-star program, so I can start getting a sense. I've had more gyms and recreation facilities than restaurants show interest in this. So Olivia, I think we had somebody not clear. Did you say swim lessons are okay or not okay?
I said, okay, sorry about that. For the lack of clarity, that swim lessons are okay, assuming, distancing and requirements, that they follow the gym requirements.
Okay. There's some really long questions in here. I'm trying to distill them down. There's a question of sports team clubs will be able to apply to the grant under gyms. And I think you have to have a physical facility, either gyms or recreation centers, to apply. But I think that's something to look at the frequently asked questions or ask during the grant application period to see if you can apply. But I think there needs to be a physical facility. But don't quote me on that. I would ask the question of the FAQs or in the FAQs or of the question and answer email address that comes up on the application.
I just posted the link to the Colorado Enterprise Fund website. It looks like that press release went out. So, so for folks, they can access
that. Jesse, will you read the last two questions? They go together. See if you can distill those down while I.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, can a youth sports organization operate that operates in several counties, get 5-star variants?
You have different order questions than I do, apparently.
Oh.
Well, no, I'm talking about. Okay, we're good. I'll ask you the question.
Perfect.
Nonprofits cannot apply for the small business grant unless you're a nonprofit restaurant or a nonprofit gym or a nonprofit. That would be the one caveat. So let's. The question I'm asking about is, it's okay. Where can they find data that proves a transmission has occurred when attending a sporting event?
I don't know that the outbreak investigations are being posted anywhere. I know specifically about the one that I'm thinking of here in Boulder County, and I know there's been multiple, and then I've heard from our peers in other counties of multiple sports that have caused outbreaks, both teams as well as spectators. The contact tracing is what traced it back to those venues.
So, and I would say that I believe the state does have an outbreak. Once an outbreak is confirmed, and they keep a list. So you may be able to find data on that on the state website. However, I don't know how much detail they provide. I've not looked at that list.
Our outbreak investigations involve people and protected public health information, so those are not really people's names.
And I know some of the other counties I'm specifically referring to, I know Larimer has pointed to a couple outbreaks having to do with some club sports. And then I think there were a couple others that were sent to me in some emails. So I don't know if you can look at some of the other counties who have done some other investigations, if they were able to put it out on their sites. The state does have an outbreak tracking, but I don't know if they track some of that because it is personal, because those aren't by business, because of as you said, some of the personal information. So under the CHASA variance, if it allows, say, 60 athletes, but our gym fitness room capacity requirement in orange is 50, do we get a variance for the room capacity? They're not sure about that.
So yeah, I was a little unclear on that, and so I appreciate you asking the question so I can clarify. I don't know exactly what the variance number is for specific activities under the CHASA guidance. You'd have to speak with the sports team that's doing it to see what because I actually don't have a physical copy of the variance to look at. So what I said in the presentation is true though, and that is whatever the variance says, whatever their capacity is allowed for their meet or their practice, would be the capacity for that room while they are there. No one else can be there. So it can't be like, oh, the school is practicing in some lanes and then there are other people practicing in other swim lanes that are unassociated. During that time, that space is a school space. They operate at the school capacities, school rules. And then as soon as they leave, it goes back to the 25% capacity, 50 people per room rule.
All right, another 5-star question about a club versus the facility. So really it is the facility that's being inspected. It's the facility that gets the variance. And even if the club is operating under different regs, it's the facility, it's the HVAC, it's the facility. The inspection criteria isn't about the club and it's what it's doing. It's about the HVAC systems, the flow of traffic, the signage, whether or not the elevators have certain controls, whether or not the drinking fountains have certain signage, whether or not the cleaning supplies are CDC approved. So that really doesn't tie to the club, that ties to the facility. And that's what the inspection is about. So I think, Lane, if you want to add to this, so that's why it's not really about how, so the facility would have to then assure that the clubs coming in are then following the inspection criteria that then would allow them to operate and have a higher capacity. But I don't know how we could translate that to the club then bringing cleaning supplies and HVAC. That's why it doesn't translate to clubs. It's about the facility in so many ways.
I think the one exception would be if the club owns and operates its own facility. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they would. But yeah, the club would need to work closely with whatever building and physical facility that they're working and functioning out of to make sure that you're going to follow all those procedures and requirements. People are very clear on what is and isn't allowed under that certification program. So it probably is a little collaborative, but the clubs itself couldn't have that certification and then go anywhere in the state and operate at different levels. It's very site specific.
Yeah, and I know a couple clubs in town that own their own facility that this makes sense to. And I've seen a lot of the facilities in town also send me an interest form. So, there's a good chance that the facility you're operating at may be looking to apply. So that's one thing. It would not be a drop-in inspection. It would be a scheduled, and this is another question, a scheduled inspection, because it would need to be a scheduled time. It's probably a 2-hour inspection, a scheduled time with the inspector. So it's not a drop-in inspection. It's not like one of those, surprise, we're here, we need to see your HVAC system. So we will have that. Would a USA swimming team need to have USA swimming apply for a variance, or can the team itself apply? I don't know if this is the CHASA variance, or I don't know what variance they're talking about here.
Not sure. So CHASA obviously applies to the high school sports, not to anything outside of that. So if this was an Olympic training, I'm not sure what they're talking about with USA swimming, or just a team. Those do not fall under CHASA currently.
And if it's about the 5-star, again, it's about the facility versus, USA swimming in general wouldn't apply for the 5-star. It would be the facility that would apply for it. So someone said they've heard rumors of the state may be putting out updated organized sports guidance later in the day. Olivia, Jesse, Lane, any word on that?
I don't have any. Yeah, don't know.
But
we hear rumors all the time, so
yeah. Once something's official, we'll certainly do our best to push it out.
Yeah. We certainly have not been solicited. Nothing has been shared with us that they're planning anything, but we've heard tons of rumors.
So there was a question. So on Monday, the recreation numbers changed. So it's now 25% or 50, whichever is smaller, but red is still 10. So that is a huge drop going from 50 to 10, especially for some of these facilities. And I think there's just a question as to whether or not there has been any consideration of going to 25 at red. And I think the key to the orange and higher was to align gyms to restaurants. And at red, restaurants are closed to indoor. So I think that's one point to make, is that 10 is higher than what restaurants are at the indoor. But I don't know if there has been any conversation about bringing the red up to 25 at red at this time.
No, there's not a very easy process for getting any changes implemented at the state level. Certainly if gyms want to reach out and others, you might have more success. So, but yeah, that's been a very challenging process to get any edits to any of the state orders.
Okay. Wouldn't pickleball be a personal gathering?
So the way that the regulations work is your activity falls into the most appropriate category. Pickleball is a sport; it fits into the sport guide or the gym activity guidance. And so at level orange, it's not permitted.
Not permitted indoors, but you
indoors.
Can,
yes, sorry, yes.
You play it outdoors.
Good point. Yes.
There are a lot of pickleball courts or tennis courts that can serve as pickleball courts that people can play outside.
All right. So this question is about if we're not able to show the transmission data among spectators because of the, I think the state has said that 1/5 of, they're only able to do 1/5 of the case tracing or whatever. What's the reasoning behind keeping parents out of gyms to watch their kids play? And this isn't a Boulder County. Is this a Boulder County rule? This is a statewide. This is a statewide order rule, correct?
So the spectator. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Lane.
No, that is a Boulder County order, and it will likely be before the Board of Health again to be put in place, or weighing in whether they're going to extend that. Again, it's the transmission of people indoors. Certainly lack of compliance sometimes of people social distancing and masking, but it's just an increased risk. We're happy to see that kids can even have some activities, and then so there has to be lines drawn somewhere. But I think that's been the challenge, is every time something is opened up, people still are not happy and want something else on top of it. And unfortunately, we're seeing the disease incidents go back up again. So it's jeopardizing businesses' livelihood. It's jeopardizing our ability to have kids in school. So unfortunately, the things that are higher risk need to be addressed first.
Okay. All right. Any other questions out there? We were all over the place today. Sorry, with grants and 5-star and swimming, and that's the purpose of these, right? To get questions answered.
Exactly.
Are there any other questions? All right. Well, our regular sessions are on Thursday at 1 o'clock. They're cross industry. And as usual, we have these Friday sessions. They pop up based on either if there's order changes and they're cross industry pop-up changes, or industry specific. We don't know if we have one next week. It all depends on what the hot topic of the week is. We might end up having to do a 5-star one at one point. So thank you. And in between, do not hesitate to ask questions at the covidbiz@bouldercounty.org. And I am fielding questions about 5-star. So if you have questions, go ahead and email me. And the press release about the grant program just got released. So the grant application is open. There should be contact information on there to ask some of these specific questions that I'll be the first to admit that I don't know the answer to. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinne. Thanks, Lane. Thanks, Olivia. Have a good weekend, everybody.